So welcome back to the Diary of a CTO, where I am delighted to be joined by this week's guest, Stuart Wright, CTO of SEGA Europe. Stuart, exceptionally happy to have you here with us today. How you doing?
Very good, thank you, and thank you for inviting me. Yeah, looking forward to this.
Good. You're very welcome. So before we get into the podcast, Stuart, a little birdie tells me you've recently been recognised as a top 100 CIO for 2025. So
Thank you very much.
congrats.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was last week. It was like an event at the Savoy as well, which was lovely and posh, lovely food, and met some really great people. So yeah, brilliant. I mean, I did a LinkedIn post where I thanked my team for that, but it was yeah, it's brilliant. What an accolade.
Thoroughly deserved, I'm sure. So awesome. Well, great to have you here with us today. So yeah, I guess where to start? I mean, Sega as a business, I think probably one that doesn't need a huge amount of introduction. Yeah, certainly played a very special part in my childhood memories. But I know from our previous conversations that Sega as a business is a very multifaceted company, and lots of different business lines within it. So it'd be good to hear a little bit more about your journey there today. And you've been there for nearly 16 years now, I believe.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. Must have been a hell of a journey. So yeah, tell us a bit about yourself, how you started out in the world of tech, and give us a bit of an overview of your career to date.
Okay. So I won't go into the murky details. Maybe I'll go through some of them. But my sort of background, I guess, getting into tech really started with computer games like a long, long, long time ago, and where I used to spend all my money on arcade games and money that I didn't really have, I suppose, as well. Which
Is that a favourite?
oh my God, where would you start? It started right back at the day with Space Invaders, but
Oh
my
yeah,
favorite was Asteroids, I suppose, and then Missile Command, and then some of the other,
sick.
all of those, and did pretty, got pretty good at them. Defender, but then, then it sort of there were a few sort of home computing computers came out. So I had a ZX81 that moved up to a Dragon 32. Which no one had probably ever heard of.
I haven't actually. No.
Yeah. Well, that was interesting. The Dragon 32. It had a keyboard, a real keyboard, which was interesting. And so I did, and there was games on that, and then the Atari and Amiga and that sort of routine, and really got involved in, through gaming. And I've always been a real gaming nut, and still am. I do way too many hours on games right now. So. And that's, and I'm really fortunate to fall in the games industry. But back in the day, it started off with those sort of home computers, and writing code for those. And I've got dyslexia, so my code writing is dreadful. I didn't really get anywhere writing code. And of course, I don't know if anyone's old enough to remember, but basically what it was, you'd get a magazine and you'd get the code would be on the magazine. You'd have to type it into your ZX81 or Dragon or whatever it was, and then it wouldn't work because you'd put typos in it, and because I'm not much of a coder and a bit dyslexia, I didn't really get anywhere with that. But I persevered. But my strength really was in the sort of engineering side of things over time. So I started building computers and got really into the engineering side of things, and then I got a bit into the sort of we got a modem. And then the modem sort of changed everything. And once you got a modem, you could enter that sort of world of bulletin boards and hacking and going the wrong side of the fence for a while, and or was the right side of the fence back then. And that was, I won't talk about any of that, but yeah, and got some foundations of security there, and eventually got a job doing tech really, and that was after I managed to get into university. I managed to get into university in my early 20s, which was a real stroke of luck, really. A lot of effort, but I managed to get into university, and then
What did you study?
I was really, really lucky. I didn't want something vocational. I wanted something different, and I found there's this course called cultural studies, and this was before cultural studies was like a bit of a bad term, I guess. And there's a centre in Birmingham. It was called the Centre for Contemporary Cultural Studies, and it was I didn't know this at the time, and it was a super renowned place that was like the birthing place of sort of that sort of study,
Yeah.
and it was filled full of the most incredible lecturers, and there was 1,000 applications to get in, and I managed to get in without any A levels, and got onto this course to do a degree, and it was just mind bending that, and we learnt things, that are completely useless for careers. So I was studying, things like, I don't know, Jacques Derrida and Nietzsche and Foucault, and as I say, and the lecturers were at real top tier. So I learnt a lot, and
Broaden the mind.
oh, massively, and it was brilliant. And I guess the thing, the interesting thing there is I learnt a lot about education and what it can do, and how it can change people's lives, which has stuck with me. And although we studied sort of, feminism, race, and gender, and those sort of things, it was the lecturers that who had faith in me and trusted me, and, to be fair, put up with me. But anyway, I ended up with a degree. I ended up at some point with a job, and I wanted to get a job in tech, and I was very lucky, and I got a job in a computer building where they built computers.
Right.
So a lot more about that. And then I got a I mean, I don't want to go into the weeds, but it was, 'cause it might not be of any interest to anyone. But I ended up in a job where we used to do computer installations for companies. It was a company called ADA in Burgess Hill, and there were some amazing people there, and everyone was quite young, and everyone was quite pumped up about whatever they were doing. And basically, I'd be given a job to go out and install all of the tech systems in a company within a week, and it'd just be like, right, you turn up on Monday, you're going to install all of the desktops, all of the servers. You're going to install their, the Exchange server, the proxy server, the network, the whole thing. And I didn't have a clue what I was doing really, but once you've done about 6 of them, you're pretty good at it. And it was just, it was madness. And then on Monday, they'd get a phone call and say the thing wasn't working, whatever it was, or the internet bust, or their dial-up modem didn't work, or their ISDN, or whatever it was. And then he'd fix it, and it was relentless. And eventually I thought, you know what, I fancy getting a job where I just manage one of these things just permanently, rather than go and install one a week for every week for years.
Mm.
I got a job as an IT manager, and I got a job, and because I could install this stuff, and basically I went into this job and I installed all their stuff. I got it all working within a week, right? And then what am I going to do now? Because you've done it all, and so you polish it up and you make it all good, but ultimately, because I was doing so many a week in the past, when I came to do this one and it was my own, I obviously did as perfect job as I could. But then you sort of sat back on your laurels, right? And you've got it all working, you're making sure everyone works, and then you sort of progress, and you go, well, I want a bigger estate, and then before you know it, you get a job somewhere else that's slightly bigger, but I always wanted to break into computing, go into gaming rather, and gaming jobs it's really difficult to break into. It's especially if you're like not a developer or an audio guy. And I don't know if you remember the magazine The Edge,
Mm.
and The Edge, and The Edge always had like job ads in it, and all of the jobs for artists and developers and audio guys and things that I didn't even really understand. There was never a job for like, we need an IT manager
Yeah.
to take over the studio, the tech, and I looked for years and years and years, and eventually I'd had a few jobs, and a guy got in contact with me and said he was setting up a games. It was a friend of a friend. I'd done someone a favor. I'd sorted out their computer, and they'd recommended me to some fella. And this fella, he said, well, I'll meet in this hotel in Brighton, and we'll have a conversation, because I'm trying to set up a games company. I was like, oh my God, games company. Well, I'm going to bite his hand off. Whatever I'm doing, I'm going to drop it. And he said, oh, it's for a Korean games company. I was like, oh, this doesn't sound very good at all, And he said, yeah, and we're going to set up a European office. I thought, well, I'll do it anyway. I don't know, had a look on the internet, couldn't find much about them. Anyway, turned out it's this company called NCSoft. And NCSoft, I mean, not a lot of people know about it unless you're in that sort of massively multiplayer online game space. Anyway, they were like the biggest online games company in the world at the time, and it was like, oh, okay, well, I'm having some of this. So anyway, we set up the Europe. There was about 4 of us who were there at the start, setting up this operation, and it grew, and it grew, and it got to a few hundred people. It was a big operation. We had some huge games came out of that, Guild Wars, and we learnt so much. And the guy who was the boss, Jeff, who got me the job, that guy called Jeff Heath, he's an industry legend. I didn't know this, and it was brilliant, and we learnt so much. I remember when we were launching our first game, and none of us really knew what we were doing, I suppose, and we went to the shop to go and buy a boxed game to see what it looked like, to see what we should do. And I thought, well, it needs to be, we need someone to help us do this. But it was brilliant. I was there for quite a long time, and it was brilliant. So, but it all imploded for one reason or another after a while, after about 5 years, and I ended up in Sega. But that's another conversation, I guess. But that's how I got there, But it was a real dream, and it still is a real dream, working in the games industry. It's just brilliant. I mean, I'm a gamer. I'm in the games industry. So, oh my God, this is great every day. It's
Yeah.
like, oh my God.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about the games industry specifically, but I do know it's particularly competitive, isn't it, and difficult to get into. And I remember actually at school, I went to a school called Twycross, and there was a game studio.
I've got the zoo. It's Twycross Zoo.
Yeah, it is actually down the road from there. I didn't go to the zoo, but it wasn't. It was about 100 yards away.
I wasn't being, I was like, Twycross. I remember that.
Yeah, and there was I don't know if you ever remember I don't know if they're still around actually, but a games studio called Rare that made
They were massive.
Yeah, they were huge, weren't they? And I always remember thinking that would be my dream job. And I sent a letter when I was like 16 years old. Like, I will literally come and sweep the floor and like make the tea, and didn't get a response. Anyway.
Oh, but the thing is, right, because that's right there that's it right there, because when you read about like Ramsay or Marco or any of the chefs or things like that, and they just camp outside. There's something they want to do, and they try hard enough, and I guess you fall into it, but you have to make the effort yourself in some ways. And I think that but that was just unfortunate. I mean, but wow. What would you have done with them? Just out of interest to me.
Anything. I was really interested in games, similar to you. It was sort of a, but that's why I love talking to people like yourself that have obviously made it a real success of it, and you can tell just by hearing you talk about it. You're still passionate about it today. Which is fantastic. So great. Well, look, I'm really interested to hear you've been with Sega for a number of years now, and really carved out a successful route for yourself within the business as well to CTO. As a general rule of thumb, what do you feel are some of the most valuable qualities of a technology leader in today's world that you aspire to?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in there, because there are, I guess, I had that CIO award, I suppose, last week. I still got it, right? But and there are CIOs that are non-techies, and I think there are CTOs that are non-techies. So there's, it's not always about, the tech that you have or or always. I'm a big believer. You should really be a techie in those spaces, but I don't want to annoy everyone, because there are, there are people I know who are non-techies in that space, and they're great. But I guess that where you've got to know you're not going to master everything. When I was looking after I went for a job interview years ago, and a long time ago, before I was in the games industry, and it was when I was working doing installations, and he said, so what do you do? What's your skill? And I said, well, I can do networks, I can do security, I can do the firewalls, I can do the desktops, I can install your Exchange server, your proxy server, your set up your permissions or your Active Directory, do all of that, set up your internet, and he's like, well, that's just, of course you can't. And I was like, well, that's what I do. And anyway, he didn't believe me, and I didn't get the job. And I was like pretty glad in a way, I suppose. But you need to understand a bit of everything, but you don't have to be the master of everything, because ultimately the people you're going to build around you are going to be the smart people, So the team that I've got right now, they're all smarter than me, there's no doubt about it. they're I'm a mentor more than anything else. And I've got an incredible urgency about me, if someone says, when do you want it done? Well, it's today, right? We're going to do it today. And let's stop talking. Let's get on with it. But I guess the thing is that you've got to put your trust in other people, and you've got to help build a great team around you, because they're the people that are going to, they've got the expertise. You can't be an expert in Cisco, or, in Palo Alto, or AD, to that level that you need to be at, especially if you're in got a massive estate. So, and you need to support them, so you've got to build a great team. They've got to trust you, and you've got to trust them. That's the thing. The bit outside of that, like, the business, that's another piece, but, and there's a whole lot to unpack there, but really it's all about your team, I think, and if you get that right, you're more than halfway there,
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of really good stuff that I think you said in that answer, but a point about that level of self-awareness where you don't always have to be the smartest person in the room, and it's a good thing. And I think that is such an important trait to have in this day and age where, quite frankly, it isn't possible to be an expert in everything, but it's having that level of self-awareness. And it's okay. And it doesn't, in all honesty, I think, with my sort of 20 years of experience of recruitment, I've spoken to a lot of CTOs over the years, and it doesn't always come naturally to people to let go and to be happy that they're not the smartest person in the room. And because there's I guess probably something inherent where a lot of these people, well, like yourself, obviously are very bright and intelligent and progress but I think, like say, a really true performing team are the ones where you've got everybody in the right role. And
But yeah, I guess you touched on something there that's like really, really important that in that, which is that you've got to let go, right? You've got to let go of whatever it is you're doing, and so like when I'm doing, when I was doing security or cybersecurity and getting involved in that, at some point you've got to put the spanners down, right? And I've got some incredible team staff, and a lot of my mission with a lot of those guys and girls is to get them to put the spanners down. And they're like, but I'm really, but I'm really passionate about this thing, really passionate about the skill that I've built over the years. And it's like, yeah, but put your spanners down, build up the staff or other people to do those things with you. And then you're freed up to do other things. And it's really difficult for people to stop, chipping away at the coalface, and take that view. But that's the difference right there. That's how, because otherwise you're just going to be there on the keyboard all day. And, and you've got to get away from that keyboard. You've got to be a people person. I know, and you're not going to gel and work with work perfectly with everyone, but you've got to build that up. So yeah, that's a really important thing for me, actually. I'm glad you mentioned that. It is putting the ability to put your tools down occasionally and just go and go, oh, you know what? I haven't, you don't see many super old, people, I'm getting on a bit, super old people just still at the coalface, right? And you've got to move away from that. So, yeah.
I think it's your point about scale, isn't it? I think it's a really, really valid point that, to truly achieve scale, we've all got the same amount of hours in a day, and, you can choose how you spend your time, but to really achieve scale, you need to be influencing others, greater scale, like say empowering others, growing them, so you get that kind of flywheel effect of how you grow a function at the end of the day. Interested to get your thoughts on that, because I know you've got a sizable team over at SEGA at the moment, but what are your views on how do you feel you structure a technology department for success? Do you have a particular kind of MO that you would run with, or do you look at it based on the particular business problem and the talent that you have? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, I think my starting point, I suppose, in in tech is tech's expensive, right? it just is. And I think you know, you can do it the cheap way, but the cheap way will be the expensive way, right? And that's really where I start from, is that, you know, there was a, you know, famously, there's a guy called Red Adair, right? And he was the guy that used to put out the oil fires or oil wells whenever they caught on fire around the world. And there was a film with him with John Wayne. I probably got it from that years ago. But anyway, he was not that I'm a fan of John Wayne, and but anyway, so and his anecdote, because he's really expensive, because he puts the you know, the fires out. There's not many people in the world can do it, and so he puts them out, and he was really expensive. And he's like, you know, if you want to see how expensive cheap is, right? Because that's going to cost you a load of money. So you know, and I think that's a really good you know, anecdote and metaphor for tech. It is expensive, and if you do it right, you know, you know, you're going to save a lot of money. You're going to keep it simple, get the right team, try and do things, be a bit more agile about it. So, you know, whatever it is you're trying to do, you know, get it 60%, 70% there, you know, before you progress any further. You know, that whole sort of waterfall. This is not just for development, you know, this is for anything.
Mm.
Is you want to get things moving. You want to be fast. You want to be innovative, and you know, the games industry is innovation. You know, and I think I was at a talk the other day, and I said that you know, if you're not innovating, you're not in the games industry. You know, so I think that you've got to innovate, but innovation is moving fast. That's what it is, and so you need fast moving teams. You don't want to turn everything into a massive project. You might have an in tray with like 20 projects, and you start working on them, and you might find that, you know, maybe 5 of those projects will just disappear before you've even got to them anyway, right? So, but where you want to be is like a doctor yes department rather than a doctor no. And I think that, you know, when people have got problems, if you come to them and or they need a solution, if they come to you and you say no, well, then they're gonna go around you, or they're going to come up with their own solution, or they'll go and find someone else to go and do it.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, but be a yes department, and innovate fast, because people when they want something, they probably want it today or tomorrow, or, you know, but that probably doesn't answer your question.
It does to a degree, because I think it's you know, it's very true about, you know, it's not. I'd always be a little bit skeptical, I guess, of an answer where it's, you know, well, you need a scrum master, you need a product owner, and so on and so forth, because I think it is a very you know, plastic question, but I think it's the mentality piece. I think is totally right, isn't it? It's about, you know, moving fast,
Yeah.
working an agile methodology, you know, empowering people. I think that's all stuff that I would massively agree with, that you know, you need to structure a department for success, absolutely. And I guess the culture piece is huge as well, isn't it? I mean, you've obviously been with Sega for a number of years now. You must still love the culture of the business.
Yeah.
We've obviously spoken quite a bit about, you know, Sega as a business. There's all these different entities, all these different parts of Sega that probably a lot of people don't know about. But talk to us a little bit about the culture of Sega, and you know, how do you feel you build a culture that allows scale?
Well, I mean, you know, you know, Sega's quite an old company. You know, it's a huge company. You know, it's got golf courses and casinos, and, you know,
Genuinely blew my mind when you told me that.
there's like some, you know, PGA tournament, and, you know, so the, you know, the computer games side of it is you know, is its own sort of piece, but it's spread. I mean, we're a global business. You know, we're in the European side of it. You know, there's the US, there's Japan. You know, we're a games publisher. We own game studios. You know, a couple of years ago, we recently acquired Rovio, you know, the mobile giant that it is, and they're amazing. And so you've got the whole sort of publishing element, which is about, you know, games, selling games and getting games to the public and understanding all of that. And then you've got the games development side, which is making games, you know, and each studio is unique. You know, they've always got their unique identity and their own culture. but yet we all come together as one within Sega, and it's a it's a really positive place to work. It's an amazing, it's a Japanese run business, and and so we've got, but Europe, I suppose, or Sega West has got a lot of autonomy, and we all start to work together, and the business is right now is got a new sort of, not a new direction, but a new focus, which is to see the whole of the customer base, I suppose, as one. Whereas it used to, I mean, computer games have changed, right? So computer games used to be, you build a computer game, stick it in a box, and put it out the door. It's, it might as well have been toothpaste, sort of box at the end of it. But it all changed, and it's all about the customers now, rightly. And we need to understand what the customers do, how they interact with our products and stuff. But the customers don't end anymore just at the game side of things. So the customers are the same customers who watch the films, who watch the TV show, who buy the plushies or buy the t-shirts, buy the trainers. So you got your merch, you've got you've got your games, you've got your TV, you've got so we call it transmedia. So the whole of the Sega now as an organization is coming together to join all those things, which is brilliant, because now, tech plays a really big part in all of that. Cause,
Yeah.
if you've got someone buying a product, maybe it's a t-shirt, how do you link that person to a game, or incentivize them to buy a product? So we're entering this new space, and it's super amazing. So the culture, I suppose, it used to be quite disparate, but now it's really coming together, and there's like a real drive that we're all, trying to do the same thing. Whereas years ago, I mean, we'd have a film launch and it wouldn't be particularly very well connected with everything else. But now it's like, but let's all link it all together. It's brilliant.
That's cool. I really like that. I mean, I think it really not surprises me, but I find very encouraging is it seems like it's a very customer centric lens, isn't it? That you're looking through all the services you provide, and makes total sense, especially in the world of data that we live in today, to know your customer and create that kind of cohesive map around their preferences and so on and so forth. So yeah, absolutely, that sounds really cool.
Well, the thing, George, just on that, I mean, that, so that, I'm a real data nut, and I love all of that, and there's such opportunity to try and help make our products better as well, by understanding our customers, because it used to be, you got a whole bunch of experts and they make the thing, whatever it is. And then, the customer decides whether they like it or not. But now you work with the customer, you understand how they play the game, what they do with the game, and where, what, why, and how, and all of that. And you can help make your products better,
Yeah.
So, it's all changed. It's brilliant.
Yeah. Very dynamic, industry, isn't it? Like you're saying, one that's, I think, always on the forefront of innovation, by the nature of the beast of technology is always evolving, and people are always interested to see what's the latest and greatest. But interested to kind of bringing it together now in this sort of more holistic pattern. You mentioned a little bit earlier, you get sort of competing different projects, and do you have, just interested to understand, as a kind of leader of the technology function, do you have a system that you look at by way of prioritizing projects based on kind of competing value, and do you have kind of a way that you approach the overall workload versus the greater strategy, just on a day to day?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say, whoever shouts loudest, gets their. There is an element of that, Let's not get away from it. And also, whoever's the most senior or wants something, you're gonna. But ultimately, it's you have that, as a CTO, you have the holistic view, and you see everything through like through a tech prism, right? So, and no one else does that. So you see things that should be joined up, maybe that aren't joined up, or systems that should be working with each other, but they're not. So if someone comes up with a, this is, at any company, prior to Sega, is that if you've got independent things being built all over the place, you're going to have problems later, and you're going to have to unwind it. So, and rebuild it. So I'm a big fan of, like, things have got to be joined up. and you're either going to do it now or you're going to do it later, but you're going to do it. So I think that whenever there's projects, coming in, it's like, how do they fit into the bigger thing? Because everything's joined up and everything's probably got data associated with it. And so, what are the priorities? Well, the thing is, first, I suppose, is making sure that they all join up. And the second thing is like, you got to build the infrastructure, the motorways, before you're going to start building the B roads. And so you've got to get the big stuff, super important. And the thing is, I know I mentioned it earlier in a way, but if you get the basics right, then everything else becomes a bit easier. But if you start building the roof before the walls, you're gonna have problems. So but yeah, I guess that there's new work coming in all the time. There's new projects. We're also it's a you how to put this, I suppose. We do a lot of sales, if you like, because we're trying to sell tech. Generally, because we're techies, we're building stuff sometimes before the business has asked for it, because it's coming. AI is a good example. It's like, I've got this analogy for AI, and I think it works. Is that there's this thing called it was some exec from Google. I was at a conference that mentioned it, and they had this popcorn analogy, and the popcorn analogy is you've got all this popcorn in this pan, and you've got some early poppers, and you got a whole load of sort of mid poppers, then you got some late poppers, and you got some never poppers, right? And so that was like that's like AI adoption in some ways. So
very much so. Yeah.
You've got people who are getting it already. I'm a huge AI nut. I'm not. I know there's loads of ethical issues and moral issues with it and such. But I use it a lot for various things. And I won't talk about what Sega's doing in a way. But what I will say is that you've got early adopters. You've got a whole bunch of people that are going to get on board, whatever the tech, and then you've got some people that never will, right? So, and you can't wait for the 100% alignment before you move forward. So you've got to, as a techie, you've got to start building this stuff or preparing for it way in advance, and see it coming. I mean, good example is COVID. I think that was when COVID came along, back in, it was December when it was starting. I think it was the December, I forget the years, but it was before it sort of all kicked off, and it was like the Wuhan. And I was watching this, I was thinking, this looks like it's going to go somewhere. And I'm looking at it through a tech lens. I'm going like, well, okay, what's this going to mean for us? So we started, thinking about it, and then it got, January, February, it was getting worse. I was like, we've got to be able to work remotely, whatever happens. And there might be a lockdown at some point. This was way before it was all going. But you look at things through a tech lens, and you're like, okay, we went around all the departments, the finance team, can you pay bills? How do you got to pay the staff? We got the developers, how they're going to make games. QA department, right? They've all got consoles, and they've got to test games. It's like, how's that going to work? And so we didn't spend a huge amount of time on it, but we were like, we were preparing. And then between all the techies at the studios and HQ, and we all sort of came up with a plan. And then as the weeks rolled on, we got closer and closer to it. But at the end, we were ready. And by the time the whole thing happened, it was like, we flicked a switch, and everyone was, there was a few outliers, but it was funny. But I look at things through a tech lens. And so, we look at the world slightly differently. And, and I think the AI things as a piece like that is that, I know lots of people who don't even know about it. I was chatting to someone the other day, and they like, I don't know anything about it. And I'm like, wow, so I'm deep in it. And there are people, within our company, and who might be very late poppers, right? So, but as techies, I think we lead in some ways. I think technology leads. I don't think it follows. But people could battle about that all day, but I think in my opinion, if you wait around for non-techies to talk about, to define what tech you need, you're going to be waiting a long time.
Yeah.
So, I was ranting. Sorry.
No, genuinely really interesting. I mean, look, you've lifted the box on the AI topic now, so I feel we've got to open up and see what's inside. Not asking you obviously to give away any trade secrets, of course, with Sega specifically, but like I say, you're very deep into it. It's a really interesting topic. I know you and I have spoken before about how it's shaping the landscape of talent, and kind of creating an interesting paradigm at that kind of more junior end of the market with regards to talent at the moment. But yeah, what are your views on it, and how do you kind of feel it's shaping things at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, because it's gonna shake up the games industry one way or another. We know whether that's whether that's at Sega or anywhere else. It's going to shake it up. Whether that's in development or art or audio or localization. Whatever it is, it's going to shake it up. And I think where AI is is where it is right now. It's going to it assists, right? And I think that using it to assist is brilliant. There's still a load of ethical questions, and anything that we do right at Sega right now is pre-production. We're not going to put. There's nothing really AI, that isn't pre-production. It's you're just not going to do that. So, but it affects all areas, as I say, development, art generation, but in pre-production, it helps. If you can get from A to B quite quickly, and it's not going out the door because it's not for the public consumption, and it helps you build concepts, and that's brilliant. And it's the same for for when you're writing an email, right? It's like you're trying to do this thing. I'm a techie, so my empathy levels aren't always great, and I'm neurodiverse.
Sure, that's not true. And don't strike me now.
Yeah, but I can be quite blunt when I don't mean to be. And an email, I've always found it's like one of the worst ways of communicating. I mean,
yeah, I agree.
It's terrible sometimes. You don't realize what you've done, or someone thinks you've said something. So AI is brilliant. I'm just like, put this in, and I'll say to her, whatever, Copilot or whatever it is, just like, make sure, this is super friendly, and it's brilliant. So I think there's a whole space for AI, and I think it augments talent. So, it helps you do the heavy lifting, and some of the the mundane stuff as well. So I'm a massive fan of it. There's Sega is it's like all games industries exploring this, and where it sort of goes, but it's a balance, right? You've got to be very cautious. We've got to be ethics are at the and morality is at the height of the top of this. So so we've got to get it right. And so so we've got a whole team looking at this, and and the various departments across the estate, making sure that we're doing everything right and working with customers where we need to. So it's going to be a game changer. And if you look at like small developers, like a one-man band, or people in a small studio, they can do amazing things quite quickly. And but I think the games industry changes in some ways, because you've got like we're all eagerly awaiting Grand Theft Auto 6, right? And that's going to be it's like the first $1 billion game that's going to come out. And I think there's going to be various levels of games in the future, and I think there's going to be $1 billion games. There's going to be games that are more sort of bedroom hackers, and then you go for sort of middle group in there.
Yeah.
So it's and I think where AI fits right now, it fits into the lower, those sort of smaller operations, because they're more agile to use some of this. So, but anyway, it's an interesting topic right now.
Absolutely, and I think very balanced view there, Stuart. I would expect nothing less, but and I totally agree with you. I think where we're at the moment, and like you talk about the level of trust that you have in it, and everything being pre-production. I think obviously it's evolving exponentially and incredibly quickly, but still for the foreseeable, I feel it's always going to be a tool rather than a solution, and it's like I say, a tool to increase productivity and accelerate talent more so than
and I guess that I suppose there's different type, you've got AIs in, your LLMs and your generative stuff, but then you've got, you've still got machine learning, right? And so, and that, loosely is AI in a sense. And so, there's a lot to be, gained by, using ML and stuff like that for crunching data and getting there. And I'm a big fan of, experts, but I'm a big fan of experts who augment their expertise with data,
Yeah.
and I'm not a really big fan of experts who don't use data, because it's
Mm.
like, look, come on, let's look at the facts. And
Yeah.
and so, so there's the whole AI piece when it comes to sort of machine learning. I think that I think humans can only process so many sort of parameters at the same time, whereas machines can process quite a lot. So there's the various elements of AI. It's a very broad sort of thing, but yeah, I'm a big fan of data and data. AI is in ML.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. It's a great point, because I mean, when you talk about AI, it's like, what are you actually talking about?
Yeah.
Like, how are you defining it? Because it is this kind of, esoteric term, isn't it? That we think is just like, it looks over everything. But there's so many forms of, like I say, computational programming, machine learning, that has been out there for yonks, which has
Yeah.
been doing incredible stuff far and above and beyond what humans are capable of in many shapes and forms. But kind of feels like, I guess it probably is like they say, the Gen AI stuff, isn't it? And the mass adoption of LLMs and that kind
Yeah.
of stuff that's starting
Yeah.
to bring the.
And I know that they're going to bake those into well, I don't know, but yeah, it's talked about a lot. It's not my expertise, but putting in, LLM chips into consoles and things. So I think that's probably inevitable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But no, very interesting. And sure, we could spend the rest of the episode talking about that, but let's try and move on if we can. But I know one of the things that you're deeply passionate about, and I think it sort of speaks to the way you're running things and the culture that you have within SEGA at the moment, is around creating really diverse teams. You're a big fan of equality. I know from our previous conversation. So just interested to get your thoughts in general around how you see the gaming industry is at the moment, and how things, could and should further evolve to kind of tackle inequality and allow it to become a truly diverse industry.
Yeah, I mean, that's it's a big thing for me. And I guess really it comes from, I didn't have a very good I didn't have a very good education. I'll be clear, I'll be frank about it. And I didn't do very well. I mean, it was all my own making. Well, a lot of it was all my own making. Some of it wasn't. But anyway, so I didn't do particularly well, in school. And so, but I did end up benefiting from an education later on, and and it is life changing. And so education is a big piece for me. And the games industry, it's got like a gender and diversity, it's got challenges, right? And that, and I don't believe that it is due to, the old way of looking at it, just like, oh, well, it's, blokes are interested in, into computer games, or, it's people of a certain class or a certain race, or, or gender or whatever it is. It's just, I don't believe any of that. It's a difficult industry to get into. It's pretty closed. It's got a whole lot better, but I believe that in some ways it's, you've got to look for those opportunities, and you've got to persevere to get into them. And it's not right, but it should be on your horizon at least, working in these spaces. And I sometimes think that these spaces not even on people's horizon, because they don't really understand what they are. I mean, no one really knows, what is the games industry, what jobs are in there, and, what is a producer, what does an artist do, all those sort of things. And I think that I think that comes down to education in a way. And so I'm a huge fan of, I got involved in the local university when I got involved with SEGA. And I went over the road and I had a word with the tech professor over there, and I said, like, what can we do to partner with you, to try and, help the students, or help build a relationship with the community and that sort of stuff. So I got to set up a great relationship with the University of West London, that's just over the road from us, in Ealing, and was part of, helping them with degree programs and making sure they're, doing things that are useful, and they tap us up, and I get my staff to do lectures or seminars, and I do as much as I can, and I became a governor there, which has been awesome, and getting a bit
Amazing.
more involved. Yeah, it's brilliant. And then I got involved with that. They bought Ruskin College, Oxford, and which was having a few issues, and so UWL bought Ruskin College, Oxford, and Ruskin, like UWL, is all about accessible education for and community impact and social justice, and in fact, that the Ruskin's credentials are incredible. I mean, Gandhi visited that college,
Wow.
and it was like the first UK women's liberation meeting was there, and so it's all that sort of stuff, and it's all really great. And I think that that sort of participation and inclusiveness is a big thing. And so to get back to Sega, or not necessarily Sega, but the games industry, we just don't get very diverse applications coming in for roles that we particularly in tech space. I can't speak for all the other places, because that's not me, but the bit that I control, or the bit that I have an impact on. And so we had a job ad, even a month ago. It was a month ago now. Went out for some kind of support role, and we had 400 applications came in, 400 CVs, and there wasn't one. There was one female in that list.
Wow.
And now we're doing something wrong, or I'm doing something wrong, and we know what we're doing wrong, and we're trying to work on it, and that sort of stuff. But there's something more than that, and so I'm a huge fan of women in STEM subjects, and pushing that, and and also the diversity piece, and the age piece. It's the same old gang, right?
Mm.
So it's a focus, it's action.
Yeah.
What it's all about.
Yeah.
So
I love that. I mean, I think that you say right, it's an awareness piece, it's an education piece. As a dad of two daughters myself, it's something I'm very passionate about. I think it does start at a much deeper and more fundamental level than we all kind of give it credence for, in terms of just, I guess, previous generations, how they were brought up and how they kind of shape opportunities for kind of pupils and talent going through school. But I love the fact that you're, like I say, you're taking action, right?
Yeah.
And when somebody says to me, what's the job of a CTO? Obviously, it's a very subjective title. Of course, it means very different things to different people. But proactively going out to an academic institute, brokering a relationship, doing that kind of reciprocal kind of value add stuff, that's massive, isn't it? And it's like you're actually doing something about tackling the problem, rather than sitting there going, right, well, we've got, the market is what it is at the moment. And to more intense purposes, you're right, it is. I mean, I always say to people, to clients of ours, that I massively respect the fact that you're looking to do something around diversity, because so many companies still aren't. And if you just take gender diversity as one element of that, as it exists today in the market, the natural distribution of the market is, unfortunately, still 85% people who identify as male, and 15% or so people that identify as female. And you can't really, it's impossible then, therefore, for everybody to have a 50-50 balance, right?
Yeah.
But what you do have to do is be the change you want to see in the world, and proactively go out there to network within that 15%, and build confidence in that 15%, where people then spread the message to others, and build out as best you can, and I think it is getting better. We look at the talent pool coming up through the realms of like data science and machine learning as a particular example for a course in university. We're seeing a lot of positive progress being made there, and it is almost in many ways, from the research we've done, getting up towards that kind of 50-50.
I mean, and I wholly agree, and and it is, let's not be binary about it, I suppose, as well. It is, there are gender recruitment issues that we've got in the industry, and I think a lot of it is tied to education. I mean, when we started this conversation, you went, wrote to Rare. It's like, if you don't know what roles that even exist, so you know, you can't even begin to apply for them because you
No.
don't even know what they are. So,
Mm.
I mean, we've got a meeting. Yeah, so I'm taking a bunch of my team over to to UWL in a few weeks to University of West London. They've got like a flight simulator thing. We get on it. They teach people to fly. You know, 747s. I don't know if it's 747s or 737s, but
Yeah.
anyway, I teach them how to fly these Boeing. Anyway, I had to go on this flight sim. Oh my god! And you fly out of Heathrow, right, or land in Heathrow. It's amazing. You got, you know, I've got a cap on the whole thing. But anyway, I've got the whole team. Well, not the whole team. We've got a whole bunch of us going to go out there. We're going to have a go on this flight sim. But the quid sort of pro quo is that all of the new intake of the tech students are going to ask us and the team all the questions about the games industry. You know, what is it? How to, you know, what are the jobs? What do you do? How did you get into it? So,
Nice.
you know, so that sort of, you know, gets rid of some of the barriers, you know, and makes them feel like that this is something they could apply for or
Clearly.
be part of. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's, but it is. I mean, if you don't know what jobs exist, you've got no chance of ever being in them, you know.
No.
So, yeah, it's an interesting piece, but yeah, with your daughters, you know, it's an uphill struggle right now. So, but we got to try and get that. We got to, as it say, action. So,
Yep.
and you know, and it isn't just gender. You know, it's social mobility. You know, it's class as much as it's
Yeah.
race, as much as it's
Yeah.
you know, that whole sort of, you know, all of that. So, but you know, Sega's working on that. We're working on that, and I'm working on that. And so it's you know, we plow through. You know,
That's it, isn't it?
right.
That's all you can do, and it is taking action. I think that's such a key point. Yeah, so many people talk about it, but you know, fundamentally, if you don't follow through and take any action,
Yeah.
then no change is ever going to come about. So, no, I love that, and I've got to ask before we move on to the final question: did you land the plane?
I did, you know, and the
Oh,
thing was,
good on you. Got a cap.
well, do you know what it is? It's like I'm not going to say how old I am, but I played so many computer games, right? So it's like a computer game. So the guys are like, you know, get these crosshairs lined up with the thing. And so I was doing it while chatting. There was about 6 of us there. We were all governors at the university. We were all having a go on it. And I'm chatting to the governors about, you know, whatever we were chatting about while, you know, repositioning my hat, while landing this thing. And they're just like, oh my God, how do you even do that? And it was just because it's just a computer game, right?
Natural, yeah, and
And, yeah, so it's brilliant. But yeah, so I got it, you know, and he got all these dials and things, and it was amazing. I'd recommend it, and you know, and chatting to the you know the tutors who are obviously there's more to it than that. I'm not gonna, you know, you know, I don't want to do it disservice because you know people make a lot of effort to study all that, but at the same time, you know, it's you know, it's an amazing thing to go and see how, you know, how this all works. You know, you got all the dials and stuff, and they set it up for us. It was brilliant. But I didn't crash it, and I'll take that.
there you go. Got a new career ahead of you if you ever decide to be done with tech. Cool. Well, look. So really enjoyed the conversation today. You know, hearing more about your journey and just your outlook on the world. Shared a huge amount of value. But I like to draw to a close every episode, as you may know by now, by asking the same question, if you would care to indulge me, which is, what would you say has been your one favorite piece of advice that you've ever received throughout your journey? Can be in a work context or a personal context, but just something that's kind of stuck with you for the road.
Well, I mean, I've only got one really, which is like,
That's handy.
yeah, and it's like, listen to your wife because she's smarter than you. It's So it's like, you know, you just listen to her because she's smarter than you. That's a good bit of advice. Now, I think, and it's true. You know, you've got to listen to other people, right? And you know, we've all got blind spots, and you know, you can't see it all. So yeah, listen to others. Yeah,
That is very, very humble, and I think a lovely way to draw to a close the episode. So thank you again for coming on. Really enjoyed our conversation. I'll definitely be keeping my eyes very close to Sega's progress in future, and yeah, wish you all the best.
thank you very much for having me, Guy. Thank you.